Dingus and Dongus.
Hey, Michael.
Episode 25.
So, pop quiz. What episode are we on?
28?
I have no clue. It doesn't matter. The robot tells us.
Yeah, exactly.
Tells you.
Yeah, and Mr. Debacle
Yep.
tells us.
Yeah, that's, yep.
Mr. or Ms. I don't know.
The
Debacle.
Debacle. Yes. Our ruler and overlord.
Yeah,
They drive this boat.
they do. It's like every 2 weeks or so we get chained down to these very comfortable sofas, and the Debacle sits down on the phone, and we just start talking.
Yeah, it punches us until we start speaking. And then we say the wrong thing, we get punched again. It's just pure robotic violence.
We'll do better this time. The Debacle. This is the dumbest bit ever.
We read Critical Role's Vox. I don't know how to say that.
Vox Machina.
Machina was my assumption.
Yeah.
Vox Machina Origins, out on Dark Horse in 2019, written by Matthew and Matthew.
Matt.
Yep, Matt and Matt. Colville and Mercer.
Mm-hmm.
And Mercer, isn't he the DM for their live play podcast?
Yeah, he's
okay.
the DM.
Gotcha.
So I found this to be just terribly okay.
I enjoyed the little adventure we went on.
Yeah.
And it very much felt like a D&D session.
It did.
So I appreciated that much.
And part of that, I think, was the way the dialogue's written.
Yes.
It's like, it doesn't sound like you're in a fantasy world. It sounds like normal people today speaking through these characters.
Right. Which is exactly what this thing is.
Right.
It's my understanding this is the D&D sessions that these group of people played before they started recording.
Did
my
they
understanding.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's my understanding this is the stuff that their characters did before they decided to start recording Critical Role and publishing Critical Role.
Okay, so this wasn't just like a made-up origin. It was they actually had these games.
I think these
Before.
are the unrecorded games.
Okay.
In graphic or comic book format.
Okay.
It's what I believe it is.
Yeah. I had no idea that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, reading this origin, it felt like it kind of catered to people who are already familiar with the characters.
Yes.
Because it
felt like they expected you to come in with some prior knowledge of the characters.
Right. Because it literally just kind of dives right in, doesn't really tell you too much. There's no real introduction of any of the characters.
No.
They're just kind of thrown in there.
They have a small text box that gives you a surface level. This is so-and-so.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah,
They
blah.
do this.
Right.
And another thing is, at least, well, no, it is all the characters. Like, for a while, I honestly had no idea what the fuck was happening.
Right. I got confused a couple times.
Yeah.
Because they would throw characters suddenly in the same environment, in the same room,
Mm-hmm.
without a build-up or lead-up from all angles or all parties.
Right.
There was, I guess, a paladin and some other guy.
Yeah, and I didn't know who was actually relevant necessarily.
Right. Like, I don't know what's necessarily going on.
Right.
It's,
And I guess at least the intro panels for the first issue or two, it showed like a big party and shrinks it down. And for a while, I wasn't quite sure what that was about.
right.
Until I suddenly realized, okay, so first panel on the top is like the big party, and then they shrink it down to whose stories they're following within this particular issue.
Yes.
Which they abandoned later when everybody started coming together.
Right.
But
It took me a minute to realize that was going on too. I was like, oh, did these people die or what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, this is just what they're telling this issue about is these folks.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely like, at least for the first half of this volume, like I was like, what the fuck's happening? I don't.
It was jumbled, like plot points that weren't connected.
Right.
They were, but I couldn't figure it out.
Right.
Or it took me a minute. I'm fine with comedy in fantasy settings.
Mm-hmm.
This had good comedy beats.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it was good comedy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And some of it feels forced.
Yes. And one thing that I really disliked, and it's just a personal preference with me, is using, like you were mentioning earlier, this is like players speaking through the characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a fantasy setting, whether it's a comic book or a TV show or even video games, I really dislike it when they use modern terminology and modern tropes.
Right, and references.
As an anchor for their bit, whatever the bit is. Mm-hmm. That infuriates me.
Right, because it takes you out of the world.
Right. And then on top of that, with this particular book, they had that. And then there's a couple instances where they break the fourth wall. So it's like a double fuck you to me.
Yeah.
One instance was Scanlan, the annoying little bard guy, was talking about something going emo or a reference to emo.
Right.
Which, as we all know, wasn't... Just, a fantasy world never existed. I understand that. But you're playing a period piece. Stick with it.
Right.
Unless it's... No, not even... Just fucking stick with it, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it's... I guess, like, it plays to that... Well, okay. So I guess my impression of what they're trying to go for is to appeal to the people who enjoy watching gameplay of D&D games, which I do.
Yeah.
Like I watch a shit ton of Acquisitions Incorporated, and they're all over the place with their stuff.
Right.
But it feels different in a comic format because you're not seeing these people. All you're seeing is the characters,
right?
In this fantasy world, and it just feels weird.
It does. But again, we can both safely assume that their goal was to represent a D&D session in a sense, and it feels that way. So good job on them for that. And even all the stuff we're talking about, I enjoyed my time spent in that world reading it. I really did. So much so that I'm going to go ahead and read the second one too, because I want to. It's fantasy, and it had the overarching story was interesting enough to me as a generic fantasy whatever.
Right.
It's like, oh, this town is poisoned. Is it cursed? I don't know. A little bit of mystery. Demon lady with 6 arms stabbing shit. Now there's magical mirrors that you can teleport to.
Right.
Fucking, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep reading and see what happens.
Now on that point, like, I was thinking it was gonna be like a gentrification plot, but it doesn't. Towards the end, it seemed to shift towards something else.
Elaborate.
Okay. So I was under the impression that this is a shitty, swampy, poor town.
Uh-huh.
They're basically trying to drive all the poor people out so they could do something else with the land. Maybe, like, I don't know, industrialize it or whatever. Or turn it into some swampy resort. I don't know.
Why did you think... The reason why I was asked, because there was a moment in the story where some bad dudes, I forget what cult or what segment they were with, they were basically saying, we profit off of these poor people. So I'd be curious what made you think that.
Well, I mean, there's like two competing
factions.
Right.
Right.
You got the people who want the poor people here because they profit off of it.
Right.
And then you got this other gang
Oh,
coming in.
Yeah.
Trying to, like, I don't know, push all the poor people out. That's what my impression was.
Gotcha.
But that kind of fell away, like, later on in the story. It just doesn't seem like that was the end goal after all.
Yeah.
I don't know what the end goal actually is because I don't think they necessarily addressed it.
They may not. Again, if this is based off their D&D game, we've played plenty of D&D games where story threads just end.
Yeah.
Without completion because the game progresses in a different area, right?
Yeah.
Or you have 5 threads and then you just never get around to 2 and 3.
Right, because, players want to do this instead.
Right. So who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting concept, and I don't, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
And I like it enough to where I'll keep reading it.
Fair.
It's I probably should go look for other D&D books or like Dragonlance books and read that shit. But
you should. Yeah, Dragonlance.
But
like the first 3 books, read those.
Well, the comic books specifically.
Oh, okay.
Not the novels.
Gotcha.
They're really good. Well, there's lots of novels I need to get through still. And I like looking at pretty pictures.
Fair.
Yeah.
It's
a fun fantasy adventure with plenty of issues.
Yeah.
And not issue releases. I meant issues as
problems.
Yes. Yeah.
Problems. And we haven't talked about the art yet. The art, I was like, It felt like Penny Arcade.
It did. It absolutely did. I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
But the character art was not fitting to what I envisioned it would be in my head.
It definitely has the feel of like episodic webcomic.
Yep.
Like the art style.
Yep.
But I did enjoy the one panel where it's a completely different style of on the bear.
Yeah, on the bear.
Yeah, that was very cute. And they're saying we're BFFs now, riding on a bear through the forest.
I didn't much care for the half elf twins as characters. They're just snooty cunts, basically.
Yeah, and my problem is I can't tell them apart.
Yeah, who's who?
Yeah,
your names are very similar.
Yeah, Vix and Vax or something like that, and they look the exact
same. The same. And I just, it's funny you mentioned that. So when I was reading it, instead of putting the brain power into figuring out who's who and keeping track, I identified them as a single person.
Yeah.
Both of them. So throughout reading the story, they were just the same person. That's how I just dealt with it.
It's fair because, like, honestly, even through the dialogue, I can't really tell them apart.
Right. And so that's how I dealt with that.
Yeah.
I know they weren't.
Right.
And I know one of them was kidnapped, fine, whatever, taken.
Yeah,
captured. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Oh, there was a funny moment. It was a gotcha moment for me because Grog, the half giant, basically fought his way up the ramp on the boat while everyone was deciding how to get on the boat.
Right.
And he got launched into the water with the Minotaur guy. And I had forgotten about him. And then the party's on the brink of destruction, going to lose this fight against the demon lady. And then the next page, I flipped it because I got a physical copy, not a digital.
Okay.
He busts through, and it was so cool to me because I had forgot about him. And then here he was to save the day, busting through a ship with a starfish on his head. It was like, yes, awesome.
I would say Grog is probably the most fun character.
I liked Grog, and I liked Druid Lady.
Okay, yeah.
The one that turned into a squirrel and the doggo.
Yeah. The one who's like kind of naive and didn't know what's going on.
Those two characters I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
The elves, kind of apathetic, admittedly, and the bard Scanlan was just dumb.
Kind of
annoying and dumb.
Yeah.
It's almost what every bard character I've seen people play in a D&D session is. This kind of, where are all the ladies? I want to have sex with the ladies and drink. And it's a one-note dumb character.
That's really funny because, like, that's what they think charisma is.
Right.
I'm going to bang all the ladies. Yeah. Look how charismatic I am. And then there's the Dragonborn Wizard, which fell really flat.
Yeah, that could have been a fantastic character. It could have been this just crotchety,
Yeah.
like angry, not necessarily even angry, just fed up.
Yeah.
I'm old and tired and fed up, but awesome fire-breathing Dragonborn guy.
Right?
That could have been a much cooler character.
Yeah. But then again, this is all based on, characters that apparently real people were playing, so,
And I'm sure the gameplay was, if you were in that room, was more satisfying.
Yeah, if you were actually engaged
Yes.
in it and playing your character,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a blast.
Right.
But reading it is...
Yeah.
Now, we went with StarGazer, Psychic Secretions, off of Nuclear War Now, released this year,
Yep.
2021. And StarGazer, for me, has always been interesting.
Yes.
They're death metal, but their riffs don't sound like any death metal riffs, like, really.
Not usually, no.
Yeah.
It was this particular album was fun. I appreciated how much of it was at a slower tempo
Mm-hmm.
than you expect from any subgenre of death metal outside of Doom, right?
Yeah.
But some of it felt like Doom moments, but without Doom riffs.
Right.
Just the tempo was slowed down in a lot of the songs.
And they threw in, like, moments where it's, at least for me, reminiscent of just, like, classic heavy metal riffing.
Yes.
There's definitely a bit of that going on. And I also really like the bass.
I was about to bring up the bass.
The bass is so fucking cool on this album.
I didn't know how to bring it up other than the bass is cool, and it reminds me of those metal albums that are jazz influenced or jazz fusion metal
Yeah.
type of stuff.
Well, it's because it's fretless bass. That's what
Oh,
it is.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's what makes that.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're sliding around, and you're not limited to what
the
the
frets. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what that is.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Fretless bass, and it works so well on here.
And it really does, and it's really cool that it's a prominent instrument in the mix and the recording. There's like bass solos.
Yeah. It's really just like right there in your face.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But it doesn't also like overpower anything else.
Right. Whereas I can see where some people would make that argument with, we'll say, Autopsy's bass.
Okay.
Different type of bass sound entirely, but it's also very prominent in Autopsy, but it's very muddy and very in your face. I love it,
Yeah.
but I can see where people wouldn't, because in the same note with both of these albums or these bands, the bass is in the forefront, and it's a integral part to the recordings. Completely different experiences, though.
Yeah. There's definitely parts where it felt like the bass was taking the lead
Yes.
role in whatever the riff or song it was, it's in, and it's nice. It's a good change of pace where a lot of death metal is like, you just have the bass in the background providing the extra punch.
Yep.
And that's all they do.
Kind of not filling in empty spaces, but adding a robustness.
Yeah,
to
just
the recording.
making the riff sound fuller.
Yes. Yeah.
But with this album, the bass is doing lots of really neat stuff.
And it's part of the song,
Yeah.
like in its own right.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Now I want to talk about the album art. I think it's fucking cool as shit.
I like that there's a circle and then a lopsided circle.
I know. And with a little dot on it.
Yes.
It's like a little planet.
Yes.
Orbit thing. And the main part, it like the first thing that pops in my head is just a really warped version of Altars of Madness.
That's what immediately came to my mind when I saw it too.
Yeah. Because, you got that circle of just twisted imagery.
Yep.
But with altars, you see distinct faces and all that stuff.
Right.
But here, you get like just vague shapes.
Yes.
Like the biggest one I was able to pick out was kind of a dude like in a meditative sitting position. That's what I was able to pick out.
I don't think I looked that closely at the interior artwork on
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm pretty sure I could see just like a vague outline of, somebody sitting cross-legged,
Yeah.
right dead smack in the center of the artwork. And then like maybe an eye or a weird lip on the side. I don't know. But I always like just weird abstract stuff anyways. So I really like the artwork.
Yeah. I mean, it was good.
Yeah.
I just didn't look that closely into it.
The kid's like, okay, are you gonna say something? Do you have something to say?
Well, I was going to comment on how at moments in the album it also felt like a psychedelic. I won't say like stoner psychedelic stuff, but there are psychedelic riffs.
Yeah.
And even almost acoustic. Was it acoustic?
Mhm. Well, no.
No? Okay.
I think it was just clean guitars.
Clean. Okay.
Yeah.
That shows how much I know about instruments. But it's cool because it's like a psychedelic moment where you get in a little slight trance and then kind of a little bit of aggression
Mm-hmm.
and then groovy riffs.
Yeah. I particularly like, I think it was the last song where they actually added clean vocals too.
Yep.
I thought that was a really cool addition, and overall I wouldn't say it's my favorite StarGazer album, but it's a fun listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know how much more I'll actually go back to it, because I do like other albums more,
Right.
but it's worth checking out.
So, with your other albums you like, what was the album? This just aggravates the hell out of me. They released 2 albums. It was the same album, but without vocals. So they released an album, and then they released another album, which is the same album without vocals. Have you listened to those?
StarGazer did that?
I'm pretty confident it was StarGazer.
No, I didn't know about that.
Okay. Yeah, they basically released 2 albums, but it was the same fucking album, just with and without
So
vocals.
they released a karaoke album?
Yes.
Well,
I'm just
okay.
imagining a MIDI version of that album that you go to, like the karaoke joints we've been to, where it's just bad MIDI, basically.
My mouth doesn't move that fast.
That's the bass.
But... it's like it's like a really bad cartoon cat.
It's like Jeff Goldblum doing the cat on mushrooms
Yes.
in MIDI.
Psychic secretions.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
Dingus and Dongus.
Hey Marco.